Hi, Misha here, and a week ago or so I put up a video on this Japanese air self-defense force trainer. This is the Mitsubishi T-2. This is their supersonic trainer, and in fact was one of the first supersonic planes in Japanese military service, and actually the first domestic one. So check that video out. Today I have another 1/72 scale model from Hobbymaster for you. This is the Kawasaki T-4 intermediate trainer. And even though this is a later design, this wasn't designed as a subsonic jet trainer. And it's just another model that Hobbymaster just put out in August of 2019, or rather kind of reintroduced. They have done a few versions of the T-4 long in the past, but it's been out of production for more than a minute. And this scheme here is the 20th anniversary of the Japanese Air Self-Defense Forces Blue Impulse Aerobatic Team, which is, I believe, the 11th Squadron in the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force. And they have been using this for, 20 years. And this was a 2016 scheme they used, meaning that they first started to fly the T-4 in 1996. But its history goes back much further than that, and it's actually a neat little plane, and a good little plane. Well, pretty much after they got the T-2 in the air as their new advanced trainer, they decided they wanted to replace their intermediate trainers. They had been using the Fuji T-1, as well as even older American-made T-33 shooting stars. And a competition was held in 1980-81, and you had the usual people. You had Fuji, Mitsubishi, and of course Kawasaki. And their original prototype was known as the KA-8050 850. And in November of 1981, they won the contract. The program had been known as the MTX, and they won that, and they were initially given a contract to be the prime producer, although there would be subcontractors, including Mitsubishi and Fuji. They would have certain parts, but Kawasaki would be the main one because they come up with the design. And it was the plan for 220 aircraft and to be in service by 1988. The first prototype of what was known at the time XT-4 flew in July of 1985, and it would be joined by 3 other prototypes, and there would be testing and minor revision for about 2.5 years. And then the first T-4 production model will go into production and first fly in June of 1988. And really there's very, very little difference between the XT-4 and the T-4, which is a testament to the solid design. And by September of that year, the Air Self-Defense Force would start to receive its first T-4 trainers, meaning that they did meet the deadline with some time to spare. And even more remarkably, I know this is hard to believe today, it came in on time and also within budget. Between about 1989 and 1992, most of your Japanese squadrons would re-equip the T2 their T4 as their intermediate subsonic trainer, and it would supplement in some instances existing T2s, but it would not replace them. The T2 was still the advanced trainer, but it would allow all the old T-33s and really most all of the T-1s to be retired. A few squadrons would re-equip later, but most happened in the early 90s. And the Blue Impulse team would select the T-4 as their next aerobatic plane in 1995, and they would start to show them off in demonstrations in 1996. It would replace the T-2, which they had adopted in 1982. And before that, they were using old F-86 Sabres. Actually, for 20 years. So they used the Sabre longer than they used the T-2, which I find a little interesting. Essentially, what we have here is, of course, a two-seat tandem seating trainer, because, well, trainer, you have the instructor in the back and pilot in the front. It uses two engines. These are Japanese-designed F3 engines, designed to be very reliable and dependable, and you always have a second one just in case. They're quite small, as you can see. The plane itself is quite small. It's just under 43 feet long and just under 33 feet wingspan. It had a maximum speed of just under 650 miles per hour. And it couldn't quite reach up to 50,000 feet, but it could get up to 49,000 and some change. There was not a dedicated combat version. They were all made as trainers. However, as you can see on this model, they did have two hardpoints, one under each wing. And while normally these would either be used for fuel tanks or practice bombs, they could also mount air-to-air missiles or air-to-ship, anti-ship type missiles, as well as 70mm rockets or gun pods. So these could be armed if necessary. They really weren't designed for that. This was a dedicated intermediate trainer, but it did have the capability, worst comes to worst. Essentially, the idea behind this was to be durable and dependable, which you'd want for any trainer. Also easy to learn to fly, again, which you'd want. They also wanted an airframe that had a long lifespan that they could use for a long period of time. And of course, that would be economical to purchase and operate. And believe it or not, this thing really met all those criteria. In fact, this was a very good little plane. If Japanese law did not forbade its companies from selling military hardware, it's possible this could have been a reasonable export. It was one of the best trainers on the planet in the 1980s. But since the law really just didn't allow for business in that sense, this was only purchased by the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force, and production ended around 1996. And as I said, they originally planned to build 220. Well, even there, they came quite close to their goals. They built 208 production models, plus the 4 prototypes, bringing the total up to 212. So, okay, 8 less than originally planned, but that's damn close, frankly. Damn close. And as I said, the Blue Impulse team flew it for 20 years and are still flying it today in 2019. Meaning they've flown it longer than the T2. And now, longer than the original F-86. So this was really the most successful plane for them. And hence why I guess Hobbymaster decided to do this model. And speaking of that, anyone who's familiar with Hobbymaster, this has the usual features: landing gear up or down. The rear, it's a tricycle, of course, arrangement. The rear landing gear are a single kind of piece together you can plug in, much like on an F-16. The front gear is kind of fun. It's a very small little gear, especially closed up, so a very small little front gear. Of course, you have 2 pilots, and it comes with a canopy open or closed. And it does come with, I thought these were fuel tanks at first, but I actually think they're maybe supposed to be practice bombs because they have fins on them and kind of the way they're patterned. But either way, it comes with 2 ordnance that you can remove from the wings. It is pretty much all metal, including the wings and fuselage. Really, the only plastic on it is the horizontals on the tail. Can't remember if it's usually metal on these. Anyway, then we have a little antenna. Again, pretty typical Hobbymaster setup here, including, of course, removable crew figures. Comes with the usual stand. Just a neat little plane. I have this kind of affinity for Japanese military. It kind of started with Arisakas and Nambus and has pretty handily moved over to the diecast models of their aircraft. So I thought I would just share you this one. I think it's a neat little plane. As far as I know, really no one else besides Hobbymaster has ever done the Kawasaki T-4. Alrighty. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them below. And if you could, like, share, and subscribe. And if you're interested in Japanese stuff, you might check out our main Mishaco channel, where we have an entire playlist dedicated to Japanese small arms. Alrighty, folks. I'm going to retire for the day. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.